15 years of service at the Denver International Air Traffic Control Tower, and they gave me a sheet cake and a mic. I stood there with the whole operations team clapping, pretending to feel honored instead of uneasy. Something about the evening buzzed wrong under my skin, like static. I'm Greg Lawson, 43 years old. I've been keeping planes from colliding for almost half my life. You'd think I'd be used to pressure. But that night, that anniversary party, had my gut in knots for a whole different reason. My wife Tessa, in a deep blue dress and glossy red lipstick, took the mic before I had a chance to speak. She smiled wide like she was being photographed. Greg is the reason I sleep peacefully at night, she said, one hand lightly brushing my arm. Knowing he's up there keeping the skies safe, I'm just in awe of his dedication. Truly, he's the best of us. People applauded. Someone near the back shouted, "Yeah, Greg." I smiled on cue, but my throat felt tight. Tessa was charming. Always had been. But this wasn't pride in her voice, it was polish. Rehearsed. I'd seen the tone before, mostly when she was trying to sell someone on a version of reality she didn't fully believe. She handed me a glass of something fizzy. To celebrate, she said, kissing me on the cheek. I lifted it, but didn't drink. The rim hovered just below my mouth. The tower supervisor patted my back and made a joke about keeping me another 15 years. I laughed, played along. But the drink stayed untouched in my hand. The glass was chilled and damp, and something in my chest kept telling me, not yet. I stepped away to the restroom, too many hands, too many questions, too much Tessa being, too much. Inside, I splashed water on my face. The bathroom was empty. Or so I thought. Don't drink it. A woman stood in the far corner by the utility sink. Janitor's coveralls. Dark curls tucked under a cap. Her eyes, wide and urgent, fixed on me like we were in a movie and she'd just read the last page of the script. What? The drink. What your wife gave you. Don't drink it. She moved quickly past me toward the door. Wait, what the hell are you talking about? But she was already gone. Just the door swinging slowly shut behind her. I looked down at my reflection in the mirror. Glass in hand. My heart beating too loud. Tessa, what the hell are you up to? I walked back to the party like nothing happened. The drink still in my hand. My thoughts racing. I didn't see the woman in coveralls anywhere in the hallways or among the staff, and I started wondering if maybe I imagined her. But no, her voice was too sharp, too real. As I stepped back into the party room, Tessa caught my eye. She smiled like she'd just aced a job interview, all poise and teeth. There you are, she said, linking her arm through mine. People were starting to think you ditched your own celebration. Just needed a breather, I said. I glanced at the glass in my hand, then at hers on the table, same shape, same pale gold color. She turned to say something to Vince, the guy from radar and scheduling, the one who always laughed too loud at her jokes. I used the moment. Swapped our glasses. Quick. Clean. When she turned back, I was holding mine and she reached for hers, the one I had carried from the bathroom. I kept my face calm. Tessa raised the flute. To 15 more years of Greg not crashing anything. People laughed. She took a long sip. I watched her lips on the glass. The next 20 minutes felt like I was holding my breath in an invisible war. Tessa floated from group to group, smiling, cracking jokes, telling stories like she was the one being honored. But I saw it. First, a slight misstep in her heels. She grabbed Vince's shoulder to steady herself. Then she started blinking too much, like the lights had gotten brighter. You okay? I asked, playing my part. She waved her hand. I'm fine. Just a little buzzed. Should have eaten more. I nodded and sipped from my glass, the safe one. The one she poured for herself. Vince hovered near her side like a bad perfume. I noticed the way he looked at her. Not like a coworker. Like a man who knew too much. His hand brushed her back once, gently, and she didn't flinch. Tessa stumbled again. Okay, she said, laughing a little too loud, maybe I'm more than buzzed. Vince stepped in. Let's get you some water. He guided her to a nearby chair while I stayed back, pretending to chat with my supervisor about runway expansion plans. But my eyes never left her. Her skin had gone a shade paler. She blinked like she couldn't focus. I slipped out my phone and texted Cole. Greg. Need eyes. Can you pull tower surveillance from tonight? Tessa. Something's off. He replied instantly. Cole. Already watching. Be there in 10. Tessa leaned her head back against the wall, her eyes fluttering closed. Vince crouched next to her, whispering something I couldn't hear. She nodded slowly, like her brain was full of fog. I stepped forward. Everything all right? Vince looked up, startled. She's not feeling great. Tessa opened her mouth like she wanted to answer, but her words came out jumbled. I just need minute. I crouched beside her, took her hand. It was clammy. Weak. Let's get you home, I said, putting on my best husband face. Vince looked like he wanted to argue, but he didn't. He helped me get her to her feet, then watched as I walked her toward the exit. I didn't say a word, but inside, my mind was screaming. The next morning, Tessa was still in bed, one arm flung over her eyes like she was shielding herself from the truth. God, she muttered. That wine hit me like a truck. I stood in the doorway with a mug of coffee in hand, watching her carefully. You barely drank, I said. She groaned. Maybe it was the stress. You know I get migraines. Right? Migraines. That didn't explain why she could barely walk out of the party or why she kept slurring her words. But I didn't say that. I just nodded, walked over, and set the coffee down beside her. Where's Dylan? She asked. Robotics competition. Remember? She exhaled in relief. Good. I don't want him seeing me like this. I left her to rest and headed downstairs. Every part of me wanted to punch a wall, but I needed to stay calm. Stay methodical. I'd learned that in the tower, panic gets people killed. By late morning, she was still upstairs, passed out. That gave me time. I started with her purse. Just a casual glance, or so I told myself. Lipstick. Receipts. A powder compact. Nothing out of the ordinary. But then I spotted her old digital camera case, a black Canon pouch she hadn't used in years. Weird place to keep anything now. Inside it was a burner phone. Not just any phone, a cheap little flip model tucked under a cloth for extra concealment. My fingers trembled as I powered it on. It buzzed with messages before the screen even loaded. Vince, last night was perfect. Can't stop thinking about it. Vince, you sure he doesn't suspect anything? Tessa, he's clueless. As always. Vince, you're incredible. One more month and this will all be ours. There were dozens. Pictures, too. Nothing graphic, but intimate enough to make me sit down. She was smiling in them. Different than how she smiled around me. Softer. Unguarded. Like a version of herself I hadn't seen in years. I set the phone aside and stared at the wall. My ears rang. I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't being paranoid. I got up, grabbed my toolkit from the garage, and crawled under Tessa's SUV. Installed the GPS tracker in less than 5 minutes. Clean. Undetectable. Cole had shown me how years ago old habits from his intelligence work die hard. Then I got in my car and pulled up the tracking dashboard from my laptop. Patterns. That's what I needed. Over the next couple of hours, I reviewed her recent locations. There it was. Every Thursday. Every single one for the past 8 weeks. Same address. A spa hotel just outside Castle Rock. Booked under the name T. Miller. Quiet. Out of the way. Not suspicious if you didn't know what to look for. But I knew. I zoomed in on the timestamp logs. 2-hour visits. Sometimes 3. Always when I was on swing shifts or handling runway delay logistics. My hands curled into fists. I had evidence now. Proof she was cheating. But something in Vince's message stuck with me. 1 more month and this will all be ours. This wasn't just about lying. This was about taking something from me. And I needed to know how far they were planning to go. By Monday night, Cole was at my front door with a flash drive in one hand and a 6-pack in the other. I brought beer, he said, holding it up. And the truth. I let him in without a word. We sat at the kitchen table while Tessa slept upstairs, still recovering from whatever had hit her at the party. She didn't know Cole had been quietly digging through her digital footprints for days. Or that I'd given him full access to the tower's security feed pulled from the employee-only archives. He slid the USB across the table. You sure you want to see this? He asked. His voice was low, serious. I just nodded. My hands were steady. Too steady. He plugged it into my laptop. It took less than 10 seconds to load. First, the footage. Grainy surveillance video from the hotel lobby. Time-stamped. Clear enough to recognize both their faces. Vince and Tessa walking in together week after week, Thursday afternoons. She wore sunglasses and a scarf like some bad movie cliché. He wore that same damn smirk he always had at work. Then the audio. Last week, Cole said, clicking a file. I got lucky. The hallway mic outside the suite picked up everything. He hit play. Tessa's voice came through first. I can't keep living like this. Pretending. Vince, we won't have to much longer. Then Tessa again, quieter. He's too careful. He knows something. Vince, so we move faster. Maybe he gets transferred. Or maybe. Things happen. There was a pause. Then Tessa again, her voice colder. I'm tired of playing the loyal wife. I want him gone. I froze. Gone. Not divorced. Not left. Gone. Cole clicked pause. They weren't just sleeping together, he said. They were planning something. I didn't speak. I couldn't. My ears were ringing. My eyes were fixed on the screen, but my mind was somewhere else, replaying every night I sat across from her at dinner. Every kiss on the cheek. Every fake "I love you" whispered before bed. She said she wanted me gone, I said finally. That's not just betrayal. That's something else. Cole nodded. You want me to keep digging? No, I said. My voice was like ice. We've got enough. I backed up every file. Every clip. Every message from the burner phone. Organized them into a folder labeled for legal use and made 3 copies. One for my lawyer. One for my safe. One for the moment I'd been planning in the back of my mind since that woman in the restroom whispered, "Don't drink it." I looked at Cole. Can you handle the paperwork? I'll start tonight, he said. Restraining orders, asset protection, public exposure kit. Whatever you need. I nodded. Then I shut the laptop and leaned back in my chair. I'd spent 15 years managing chaos at 30,000 feet. Now, I was about to manage it in my own home. Tessa wanted me gone. She had no idea who she was dealing with. 2 weeks later, we hosted a barbecue in our new neighborhood. It was Tessa's idea, of course. She said we needed to build rapport and make a good impression on the HOA. Translation: she needed an audience. She wore a white sundress and that polished smile that always seemed like it belonged to someone else. I played along. Grilling burgers, laughing with neighbors, refilling drinks like I didn't know she had been slipping away every Thursday to screw Vince behind my back. Like I didn't know she'd once used the word eliminate when talking about me. Cole had helped me prep everything. Flash drive. Printouts. Timelines. Audio transcripts. I kept them in a sealed envelope in the kitchen drawer next to the takeout menus. Wait for the right moment, he told me. Somewhere public. With witnesses. The backyard buzzed with voices and music. Vince showed up late, of course, sleeveless polo shirt, trying too hard, and Tessa lit up like she'd just spotted a celebrity. She introduced him to our neighbors as one of Greg's co-workers from the tower. I almost choked on my beer. We sat down at a long table under the string lights, paper plates loaded with barbecue and pasta salad. Vince took the seat right across from me, all confident and clueless. I stood up with my glass in hand. Hey everyone, I said. Thanks for coming. I just wanted to say how much it means to have new friends around us. New starts. Clean slates. Tessa beamed at me. Vince raised his drink. And while we're talking about honesty and transparency, I continued, I think it's a good time to share something. I walked back inside, ignoring the quiet murmur behind me. I opened the kitchen drawer and pulled out the envelope. When I came back out, I set it down in the middle of the table. This, I said, is what betrayal looks like. Tessa's smile dropped. Vince looked confused, then nervous. I opened the envelope and started laying down the evidence. One by one. Photos of Tessa and Vince entering the hotel. Printouts of the burner phone messages. Tessa, I'll pretend a little longer. He won't suspect anything. Vince, we'll celebrate once he's out of the picture. People started whispering. Then the transcripts. Greg is too smart for this to last forever, Tessa had said. I want him gone, she had added. Vince's fiancée, I hadn't even known he had one, gasped and pushed away from the table. Her hands were shaking. Her plate clattered to the patio as she stood up and backed away. Tessa lunged for the papers. This is disgusting, she hissed. You hacked me? I didn't flinch. I found a phone. In your old camera case. With messages to your boyfriend here. This is insane, Vince said, standing. You can't just. Sit down, I said. My voice was calm. Controlled. You'll want to hear this part. I pulled out the last sheet. A legal form. The deed to the house, I said. Signed over to me 2 weeks ago. Filed and notarized. Tessa's mouth opened, but no words came out. You always said I was predictable, I said quietly. Well, predict this. I pulled another envelope from my pocket and handed it to her. She stared at it. Divorce papers, I said. You're served. Everyone at the table was frozen. Even the music had stopped playing. I looked across the yard and saw our son, Dylan, standing by the fence. He'd come home early from his robotics meet. I hadn't expected him back yet, but maybe this was how it was meant to happen. He walked toward us slowly. Eyes locked on his mom. You lied to him, he said to her. And to me. Tessa tried to reach for his hand. Sweetheart, He stepped back. I don't want to live with you, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. The backyard went silent again. Tessa turned to me, her eyes wild. You ruined everything. I looked at her, dead in the eye. No, I said. You did. Tessa was gone the next morning. No note. No message. Just an open closet and the echo of drawers that had been yanked out in a rush. A few hangers dangled empty, swaying slightly like they were still reacting to her leaving. I didn't feel relief, not exactly. I felt space. The air in the house had changed. It was quieter. Lighter. Like someone had finally cracked a window in a room that had been sealed shut for too long. I texted Cole. Greg, she's gone. Cole just tracked her GPS. She's at Vince's apartment. Want me to swing by? Greg, no. Let her rot. Dylan came downstairs an hour later in sweatpants and a hoodie, earbuds slung around his neck. He looked around like he was expecting something to still blow up. She gone? He asked. Yeah. He just nodded and poured himself a bowl of cereal. No questions. No tears. Just quiet acceptance. Maybe he'd known for longer than I realized. Kids are sharper than we give them credit for. Later that afternoon, we started cleaning the house. Not the floors or the windows. The life part. We tackled the attic first, boxes of old photo albums, dusty keepsakes, love letters from a different decade. Dylan picked up a picture of us at a beach in San Diego. Tessa was smiling, holding his hand. He just stared at it for a second, then dropped it in the donation pile. You sure? I asked. He shrugged. She was fake even back then. We cleared out half the attic in an hour. Every drawer, every shelf, we worked like we were scrubbing the house of a lie. And maybe we were. A relationship built on betrayal leaves stains. You can't see them at first, but once you do, you can't unsee them. In our bedroom, I opened the nightstand and found the scented candle she always lit during date nights. I carried it to the trash without hesitation. Dylan stood at the doorway, arms crossed. You okay? I asked. Better, he said. We should paint this room. Make it not feel like hers anymore. That hit me harder than anything. Not angry. Not sad. Just done. I nodded. Yeah. Let's do that. That night, the house didn't feel haunted. It didn't feel broken. It just felt honest. And for the first time in years, I slept through the night without wondering what else she was hiding. There was nothing left for her to take. The days that followed were quiet. Almost too quiet. I started waking up before my alarm. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I'd sit on the porch with my coffee and watch the sun creep up over the backyard fence. It was strange how different the same house could feel once the poison was drained from it. Dylan seemed lighter too. He spent more time in the garage, working on his robot projects, blasting music while he soldered wires. He even started humming again, something I hadn't heard since before everything cracked wide open. I kept busy with little things. Replacing the leaky faucet in the upstairs bathroom. Patching a drywall crack in the laundry room. I mowed the lawn twice in 1 week. Not because it needed it, but because I liked the sound of order returning. One afternoon, I was planting a row of marigolds in the front bed when someone called out behind me. Didn't peg you for a gardener? I turned. It was Hannah, Vince's older sister. I barely knew her. We'd exchanged maybe 2 sentences at work events. She was tall, calm, always had that unreadable expression like she knew things before you said them. She stood at the edge of the lawn holding a grocery bag. I brought Dylan some snacks, she said. Figured he could use a little something normal. I wiped the dirt from my hands and nodded. Thanks. He's inside, working on one of his robots. She smiled, just a little. That kid's got a mind like a Swiss watch. I waved her toward the house. You can go on in. That became a pattern. She started dropping by every few days. Sometimes with snacks, sometimes with books she thought Dylan might like. Once she even brought a telescope claiming she found it at a yard sale, but it looked brand new. She never stayed long. Never lingered. But we started talking more. First about Dylan. Then about work. Then about everything else. It was easy. There were no games. No undercurrents. Just shared silence and simple conversations, the kind where no one's trying to win. One night, after Dylan had gone to bed, Hannah stayed behind a little longer than usual. We sat on the porch sipping tea. She looked out at the yard and said, "It's peaceful here." "It didn't used to be," I replied. She looked over at me, her eyes steady. "But it is now." I didn't say anything back. I didn't have to. That night, after she left, I stood alone in the kitchen, the house quiet around me. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like something was missing. I felt like something real was beginning. It came in a cream-colored envelope with gold foil trim. No return address, but I didn't need one. The handwriting alone made my stomach twist. Tessa. Inside was a thick, overpriced invitation with calligraphy so fancy it was almost hard to read. You are cordially invited to the wedding of Tessa Montgomery and Vincent Hale. It would take place at a vineyard outside Boulder, black tie optional, Saturday evening, wine tasting to follow. I read it twice. Then a third time. No note. No explanation. Just that polished piece of paper like they were announcing their victory. Like they believed they'd risen above everything and expected me to witness it. I carried the invite out to the backyard. Hannah was sitting on the patio reading a book, legs tucked beneath her. "Mail's here," I said, holding it up. She took one look and raised her eyebrows. "Please tell me that's not what I think it is." "Oh, it is," I said, smiling grimly. "The happy couple wants me to see how well their betrayal worked out." She shook her head and let out a soft, dry laugh. "They really sent you an invite?" I nodded. "I'm guessing they think it proves they're the bigger people. Or maybe it's just to rub it in." I grabbed the fire pit lighter from the deck box. Hannah watched as I dropped the invitation into the pit. With one flick, the flame took hold. The paper curled, blackened, and folded in on itself like it was ashamed to still exist. We sat there watching it burn. "No RSVP," she said, grinning. "Consider that my RSVP," I said, leaning back in the chair. The ashes fluttered like confetti. I sipped my tea, staring into the glow of the dying paper. You ever notice how people like that always think they're the victims? Like they can do whatever they want and then act wounded when the world doesn't cheer them on. Hannah didn't say anything at first. She just gave me that look, the one she had when she knew exactly what I meant without needing me to say more. "They deserve each other," she finally said. And for once I agreed. Let them have their perfect little vineyard wedding. I wasn't going back to that story. I was done being their supporting character. Life found a rhythm again, not fast, not flashy. Just real. Mornings started with coffee on the porch. Dylan would come downstairs in his mismatched socks, still half asleep, mutter something about cereal, and disappear into the kitchen. Sometimes I'd catch him sketching robot designs on the backs of old grocery receipts. Other times he'd sit in the garage for hours, music humming from his speaker while gears and wires slowly came to life in his hands. The silence in the house wasn't lonely anymore. It was comfortable. A quiet that felt earned. Hannah never tried to fill space that didn't need filling. She came by when she had time, sometimes just to drop off new parts for Dylan's projects, sometimes with cookies she claimed were bought but disguised as homemade. We never made it a thing. It just happened. She didn't hover. Didn't pry. She listened more than she talked. And when she did talk, it wasn't about herself. It was about books, or constellations, or odd stories from her job at the weather station. One evening, the three of us sat on the back porch, watching the sky fade from blue to pink. Dylan had his sketchbook open, flipping through pages. "I've been thinking," he said, licking a thumb to turn the page. "The living room's kinda boring." "Agreed," Hannah said. "Too beige." "I want to paint a mural," he said, eyes still on the page. "Something bold. Not like Mom's taste." I paused, caught off guard. "What kind of mural?" "I don't know yet. Something real. Like, about us. Not fake happy. Just honest." Hannah looked over at him. "You've got a name for it?" He grinned a little. "Not yet. But I'll know when I see it." She smiled, then reached over and nudged his shoulder gently. "Can I help paint it?" "Sure," Dylan said. Then after a moment, like it wasn't a big deal at all, "You're kind of like Aunt H now anyway." My breath caught a little, but I didn't say anything. Neither did she. She just gave him a soft smile that said more than any words could. Later that night, as I cleaned up the brushes from Dylan's test swatches on the garage wall, Hannah stayed behind to help wipe the counters. "You okay with that?" she asked quietly. "What he called me?" I looked at her standing there in her jeans and hoodie, sleeves pushed up, flour on her cheek from earlier. "I think it fits," I said. And I meant it. Our home didn't look like it used to. It looked better. Not perfect, but more us. Real laughter, rough edges, paint-stained fingers, and all. It came at 2:13 a.m. A message from a blocked number. Just one sentence. "Maybe one day you'll realize you weren't enough." No name. No context. But I didn't need one. I stared at it for a long time, not angry, not even hurt. Just tired. Tessa's final swing. One last attempt to wound me. To make sure I remembered that, in her story, she was the one wronged. I didn't reply. I didn't even screenshot it. Instead, I pulled out an old notebook I kept in the nightstand. Inside it was a page I wrote to myself a month ago, the day Cole handed me the evidence. "She didn't break you. She revealed you." I read it again, then smiled. The next morning, the house was already awake. Dylan was spreading drop cloths across the living room floor, his sketchbook propped open beside a basket of paint supplies. His mural idea had evolved from abstract colors into something bolder, shapes, lines, the outline of a figure standing at a cliff, staring into the open sky. "Big day?" I asked, sipping my coffee. He grinned. "Hannah's bringing more blue paint." Right on cue, she knocked at the back door with a tray of muffins and 3 paint rollers under one arm. She wore sweats and no makeup, hair tied back in a messy knot. She looked like home. "Ready to create chaos?" she asked Dylan. He pumped a fist in the air. "Let's do it." They got to work while I watched from the kitchen table, warm mug in hand. The sun streamed through the window, catching little specks of dust dancing in the air. The sound of brushes against the wall, Dylan's occasional laugh, the way Hannah stepped back and tilted her head at his choices, it all blended into a kind of peace I never realized I was missing. By early afternoon, the first layers were drying. The room smelled like fresh paint and new beginnings. Hannah sat beside me on the porch, our shoes kicked off, her foot brushing against mine beneath the table. "You good?" she asked. I nodded slowly. "Yeah. Actually, yeah." She leaned her head against my shoulder. I didn't think about Tessa. I didn't think about what she'd said or where she was now or how Vince probably still thought he won something. Let them keep pretending they were victims of a man who got tired of being used. I had a kid who wanted to paint the truth on his walls. I had a woman beside me who didn't care about polish or pretense. And I had myself finally without the weight of being needed by the wrong people. As Dylan stood in front of the half-finished mural, brush still dripping, he turned and grinned. "I think I'm gonna call it What Comes After." I smiled back. "Perfect."